I want to be clear, like, to the best of my knowledge, there is no evidence for alien life on Earth.
For most people, it comes as a huge surprise that Elon Musk, the man known for making great strides in space exploration and technology, does not believe in aliens. However, during a talk at the Mike Institute Global Conference, Elon stated that while he never believed aliens existed...
Where are the aliens?
Or the aliens.
That's one of the Fermi paradox question.
He remains open to the possibilities, given the countless verified stories he's read of encounters with the impossible. What were these encounters, and how did they change his perspective? Join us as we explore 10 of these stories, their impact, and how they changed Elon's perspective on the subject. 1. Assaulted by an alien. It was November 9, 1979, and Robert Taylor, a well-known forestry worker in Scotland, was taking out his dog for a walk in the nearby forest. As always, after 15 minutes, he turned around with his dog to head back home, but on their way back, Robert came across the unthinkable, a large spherical object floating just over 10 feet above the ground. This object had a rough surface apparently made of metal, and it emitted a low humming sound as it hovered right in front of the frightened 60-year-old man. Taylor was lost for words, frightened, but confused. It got so bad that he was unsure of whether to run away or examine what was in front of him. But as he stood there, 2 smaller spheres dropped from the larger object and began rolling towards him. As he turned to walk away, he felt sharp objects latched onto his trousers. Like the tentacles of a large octopus, they latched onto his clothes, attempting to pull him back in the direction of the gargantuan sphere. What followed was a choking sensation, followed by a strange, deep sleep. Robert woke up and found himself lying on the ground with his trousers shredded and his legs covered in bruises. Injured and weak, Robert made his way to the house and met his wife, who immediately dialed 911. Not long after, the police arrived with a doctor and found the site where it happened. Everything Robert said aligned perfectly with all they discovered, including the strange marks on his body, his shredded clothes, and the area where it happened. It was a difficult case for the authorities back then, and to this day, there remains no official explanation for what happened. But there is more. 2. A veteran's testimony. It was 1951. The Cold War was garnering momentum, and the American people were on high alert for the exciting future of space exploration. It was also during this period of great excitement when Gordon Cooper, an experienced pilot in the U.S. Air Force, had an encounter that changed the trajectory of his life. He was stationed at Germany during that time, flying the famous F-86 Sabre jet. He was doing this with other experienced pilots, all observing basic protocol for that time of day. It was right in the middle of this operation when Gordon and his comrades saw the impossible. Their jaws hit the floor as they observed a cluster of oddly shaped objects moving in a formation he had never seen before. Each of these objects were shaped like saucers, moving at unbelievable speeds while making strange and sudden turns that defied the laws of physics. Despite how strangely they moved, each flying object maintained the same distance from each other, and given their many years of flying aircrafts, Gordon and his comrades knew it was impossible for current jets to do this. Despite being stunned by the wonderful view, Gordon and his teammates were still soldiers, instructed to stop all unauthorized aircraft on site. Following strict orders, Gordon and his comrades tried to intercept the flying objects, but they quickly disappeared, outpacing the U.S. Air Force jets at an alarming speed. Gordon had never seen an aircraft move so fast before and almost questioned his experience altogether. But he wasn't the only one who saw this, and that gave him the confidence he needed. Unsure of what to make of this, the pilots reported what they saw to their superiors, who found it difficult to believe anything they said. Thanks to how bogus the claims sounded, no official investigation was conducted, and the buzz ended as soon as it started. 3. A New York invasion. If you are a hardcore comic book fan, at some point you must have noticed the same old trope of aliens always targeting New York each time they visit Earth. Well, this tired old trope came to life on May 15th, 2021, at about 9 p.m. Over 50 civilians found themselves craning their necks as they looked up at the sky with their camera phones. Up in the sky were strange lights arranged like something out of a Star Wars movie, moving like they were beams glowing from a large spacecraft. This wasn't a testimony given by some random guy. It was captured on film by multiple witnesses. The incident caused an uproar on social media, with several reposts, tweets, and comments on what really happened. Local news stations picked up the story, with some speculating that it was most likely a military exercise going on that night, or a private drone exhibition the public happened to see. However, this speculation was easily debunked by the New York Police Department and Federal Aviation Administration, both stating they knew nothing about unexplained aerial phenomena at the time. Though this strange response raised a lot of valid suspicions, no official explanation was given, and as a result, nobody knew for sure what happened that night, even to this day. But if just over 50 civilians isn't enough to prove we aren't alone in the universe, what happens when we have over 100 true witnesses talking about the same thing? Let's find out. 4. The Salt Lake Encounter. Over 60 years ago, on a cold evening in Utah, many residents of Salt Lake City saw something that defied all reason. It was October 2nd, and civilians in the vicinity were greeted with the sight of a strange object in the sky. This object was a glowing disk, hovering quietly in the sky before moving rapidly at an alarming speed. It was so fast that people screamed the moment it left, leaving no clues behind. Of course, like most other recent reports that couldn't be verified, this story was almost entirely ignored. However, what kept it going was that it was seen by a wide variety of people. From pilots and civilians to trusted police officers, many people saw it. And it couldn't be ignored. It also lasted for a while, hovering in the sky for about 15 minutes while doing the impossible. One police officer testified that it would accelerate in random directions at incredible speeds while remaining in sight towards the end of its visit, while one pilot said it moved at incredible speeds that far outmatched the best aircraft in the world at the time. There were no sounds, no propulsions, just movements. The pilot took this very seriously, considering it a potential threat to those living in the city. And out of concern, the pilot contacted someone he knew who worked in the Air Force. Soon enough, an official investigation was put forth by the U.S. Air Force. But after several months of deliberations and study, they couldn't come to a valid conclusion on what happened that evening. As far as they knew, it could have been a weather balloon or a misidentified aircraft that hadn't been made public. Nobody knew for sure, despite the hundreds of people who witnessed the event. Now, if you aren't sitting down, this might be a good time to do so, as things are about to get shocking. 5. The Jrod Encounter. Perhaps the most intriguing of all popular stories of encounters with aliens is the story of Jrod. For context, it all began on May 19, 1953. A devastating nuclear test had sent shockwaves through the atmosphere. Many were in fear, hoping no flying aircrafts were damaged by the sudden impact. But just a few days later, many people witnessed a large disc-shaped object coming down from the sky. A closer look showed that it was plummeting instead of landing, crashing at a place near Kingman, Arizona. By the following week, no traces could be found of the crashed object, and subsequent rumors indicated that it had been secretly recovered and taken away to the ever-suspicious Area 51. The aircraft itself was about 30 feet wide and oval-shaped with many portholes. Inside the spacecraft were 3 humanoid beings, all wearing suits that seemed to be made out of metal. The crash was catastrophic, and they were all dead. That is, except one. According to one of the doctors who allegedly worked on the project, This oddly shaped humanoid figure was recovered from the crash, injured and weak. It was small, with large eyes, gray skin, and an oddly large head. This being, later known as Jrod, was kept secret by government officials for further study. Many rumors suggest they intend to use Jrod to reverse engineer a similar spacecraft to help send the sentient being back home while finding out ways of harnessing the more advanced technologies to our benefit. Among those who allegedly worked with the alien was Dan Burish, a famous microbiologist, and over 10 people who once worked at Area 51. Despite a few contradictory statements about what truly happened behind closed doors, these witnesses all agree on one thing: we are not alone in the universe. We've never been. 6. A telepathic nightmare. It was July the 17th, 1991. Just another warm night in Aldergrove, British Columbia. Karina Sybils, a middle-aged woman at the time, had just sent her children to bed and gone off to have a talk with someone. Her friend left not long after, and Karina was about to step back in when she noticed a large boomerang-shaped object hovering over the home. It made no sound, but it looked frightening. The shock alone nearly gave her a stroke, and like she wasn't frightened enough, a beam of light shot from the spacecraft. And what came next was a deep sleep. After opening her eyes almost an hour later, there was no sign of what she saw earlier, and her memories were all over the place. Throughout the following day, she tried to forget what happened, but to no avail. Wanting to make sense out of this, she contacted the local UFO reporting center and was alarmed to find out other people saw the same thing, but from a distance. She needed to see it again, so much so that she underwent hypnosis on purpose just to regain lost memory. The memories recalled implied that she communicated with multiple humanoid beings who spoke telepathically. Against her will, they took a few swab samples from her body, conducting various examinations before leaving her unconscious with a jammed-up memory. Now, with all the memories she needed to prove what she experienced, she told everyone she knew. But thanks to her lack of evidence beyond testimony, nobody took her seriously. But to this day, it remains one of the most intriguing stories of strange encounters with the unknown. 7. Unusual lights in the sky. About 6 years later, in the month of May, another person had a frightening encounter with the unknown. This person was a young man named Chad Granoski, who was living with his parents at a cottage in Oneida Lake, New York. That evening, Granoski was enjoying the night breeze when he noticed unusual lights in the sky. These lights were far from static, always moving in strange ways that weren't typical for an aircraft. Though these lights were separate, they were arranged in a manner implying they were part of a much larger structure. It wasn't completely dark when this happened, and Chad was able to make out the shape of this staring object hovering before his eyes. This strange flying object was shaped like a triangle, with lights changing colors from plain white to beautiful palettes of red and blue. It had no propulsion, and it looked so strange that Chad couldn't help pulling out his video camera to start recording. Thankfully, the footage was clear, showing the lights shining against the now dark sky. This incident remains unexplained to this day, and is just one out of thousands. Now this is where it gets interesting. 8. Jorges Flying Cube. On an undisclosed date in late 2020, a renowned pilot named Jorge Arteaga was taking a routine flight over Colombia from Bogota to Salento. As Jorge and his co-pilot navigated the limitless skies, they noticed a strange object emerging from the clouds. The object was dark, shaped like a cube, hovering on its own before moving straight at them. Being more curious than frightened, the pilot grabbed his camera and began filming as the object was moving towards their plane. The co-pilot couldn't believe what was happening, calling Jorge by his name many times until he joined in moving the aircraft out of the way. While the co-pilot panicked, wondering how it was that they were still alive, Jorge was amazed, wishing he had more time to capture everything he saw. He would later describe the object not as a perfect cube, but as a dark object with a pointed front and a rounded back, giving the illusion of another shape when seen from the front. Like many other UFO sightings, he also spoke about how this object defied many scientific laws, flying like it ran on magic, not fuel. No human-made aircraft flew like what they saw, and he was sure of it. What made this encounter stand out the most was that it occurred in broad daylight, with the object itself being matte black in color. The moment seemed to be just perfect for the encounter. Frightening, but exciting. Both of them were experienced pilots who had nothing to prove at that point in their careers, and it was unlikely they were just trying to get famous by lying about something that never happened. Their testimony was so good that famous ufologist Jaime Maussan called it one of the best pieces of evidence for the existence of UFOs today. But it gets weirder. 9. A spacecraft by Homeland Security. It was October 23, 2019, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security was at it again. This time, the legal crews were on the tails of major gangs responsible for spreading illegal substances on the streets. To keep track of the criminal cartel's activities, the department put up a spy plane to monitor all ongoing activities in the area. But while the experts were hoping to find answers to the questions they had in mind, they found themselves intrigued by something else the spy plane had captured on camera. This time, it captured something bizarre floating in the air. At first glance, one would be quick to conclude it was a UFO, except the problem was that it was flying way too low for a traditional UFO at that time of the night. It wasn't moving like something which didn't want to be detected, and worst of all, it was shaped like a duck.
Rubber duck UFO is all it's quacked up to be.
It was now 9 p.m., and the crew kept tracking this object for an hour as it kept moving in a straight direction. Not wanting to keep wasting time on something that wasn't the mission, the crew redirected the trajectory of the spy plane, choosing instead to focus on what they were supposed to do. They had nearly 1 hour of footage, and it was all they needed at the moment, or so they thought. After many nights of close study lasting over a month, all the crew could tell was that the UFO was about 6 feet long, moving at over 100 miles an hour. Despite moving at such a high speed, it produced no heat, and it rotated at a steady pace as it flew. Among one of the trusted experts that studies this was former counterintelligence special agent Luis Elizondo. He confirmed that the footage was real, and no aspect about it was fake. However, no official explanation has been given about it, even till this day. 10. UFOs and Nukes. March 16, 1967. Robert Hastings was working as a janitor in the air traffic control tower at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. It was an average day in every sense of the word, with nothing huge to look forward to. But everything changed when he and his colleagues saw 5 UFOs being tracked on radar. Like the shape and movement pattern of the objects weren't strange enough, Robert also noticed how they seemed attracted to the nuclear missile silos nearby. Like most other sightings of UFOs, these flying objects were maneuvering at very high speeds, stopping without momentum before suddenly moving swiftly. As he grew older, he found out that his experience wasn't the only time UFOs were found close to nuclear sites. According to previous superiors who worked at the station back then, these unknown objects had been seen on multiple occasions floating and moving above the most dangerous places located southeast of the base. With this in mind, Robert would go on a lifelong quest to learn more about these things. He would spend decades learning about all similar incidents, and by 2005, he had interviewed almost 200 veterans who recalled various times when they saw strange, unauthorized flying objects hovering around nuclear stations. With all the testimonies he needed, Robert would compile all of them into his best-selling work, UFOs and Nukes, a book that explored the many extraordinary encounters that occurred at places closest to dangerous nuclear weapons. While Robert admits this, alone doesn't prove aliens are real and are interested in exploring our most dangerous weapons. He believes the potential link is still there, and so does Elon Musk. While the tech billionaire maintains that he hasn't had an encounter with UFOs in his past 2 decades of space exploration, these compelling stories were good enough to change his mind on his subject. Contrary to what he once thought, we are not alone in the universe. So, what do you think? Has Elon truly changed his mind about aliens? Or is this just another passing phase in the tech billionaire's busy life? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.